Hey everyone, it's Thrifting Time, which means it's time to see what kinds of interesting and weird crap we can find at thrift stores. Let's get started in the CD section of this first Goodwill store. And the first thing I found was a copy of Microsoft Encarta 97 Deluxe. Now I collect these Microsoft Home titles and I have some of the earlier versions of Encarta, but I don't have Encarta 97, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this. Something else I always like to find are these collections of old shareware PC games. This one's called Galaxy of Games, and apparently it's the best collection ever. I somehow doubt that, but I do like collecting these, so I'm going to grab that as well. The next thing I found was an audio CD that I didn't know existed. This is the Yellow album from The Simpsons. Now, I know that they did an album called The Simpsons Sing the Blues because I have that on cassette, but I didn't know this existed, and I kind of regret not grabbing it. The last thing I found over here was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? I have an edutainment section in my old PC game collection, and I did not have this version of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, so I went ahead and grabbed that as well. They did have a video game section over in the media, but it was what you expect to find at Goodwill, just tons of copies of Wii Fit and Xbox 360 Kinect games. Over in the books, I noticed this giant microwave cookbook, The Complete Guide by Pat Jester. This book's from 1982, and I grew up in the 80s, so I remember for some reason cooking stuff in the microwave was like a big deal, even though none of it ever came out good. I can't imagine making a roast turkey in the microwave. That sounds absolutely disgusting. This caught my eye over in the toy section. It looks like it's a piece from an old McDonald's playset, and the reason why I say old is because it has a lot of the old McDonald Land cast on it, which they don't really use for advertising anymore. Grimace has recently come back because of his whole birthday shake thing, but I haven't seen the Fry Guys, for example, used in commercials in ages. I found something that wasn't a toy in the toy section also. This is a Sony Mavica floppy disk camera. I have one of these that I like to mess around with, but it's a slightly newer model than this one. This one's a model MVC FD71, and I have an FD87 at home. It also had this battery charger taped to it, but it turns out that this battery charger doesn't actually go with this camera. That's actually okay though, because it takes the same battery as my other Sony Mavica camera. And I decided to go ahead and grab this one because it was a little bit older and I love messing with things with floppy disks. And later on in the video we will see how pictures come out when taken with this floppy disk camera. Over in the art section, I found this old picture frame with somebody's family picture still in it. It's kind of a sad thing to see donated at Goodwill. I really don't understand why they wouldn't take the pictures out first. I also saw this weird chiropractic motivational poster with babies on it. Nobody should be doing chiropractic adjustments on babies. Here's something I see often at Goodwill: questionable pieces of exercise equipment. I wonder how this one works.
What? It's just the Smasher Dick 5000?
Here's a really neat old looking pair of speakers that I saw. They say they're LXI series, which isn't something that I'm familiar with, but I like the little graph that's there on them. That looks neat. And when I looked at the back to see what brand they were, I saw a logo that I'm very familiar with. These speakers came from Sears, and I'm sure they came with a whole audio system, and I would love to have seen what that looked like. I looked around the store but didn't find anything like that. There was just this pair of speakers here, and they looked like they were in decent condition. Here's something over in the electronics section from a store you might be familiar with. This is a little CB radio from Realistic, and Realistic was one of Radio Shack's brands. This one's a little 3-channel CB radio. And something that I always love about these is how long the antennas are on them. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one all the way out so you can see how long it is. It just keeps going. And here it is fully extended. That's crazy. It's amazing to me that these old CB radios need antennas that big, but then modern cell phones don't have antennas at all, at least not externally, they're all on the inside. Here's a whole classroom set of graphing calculators, but what was surprising to me is that these are from Casio and not Texas Instruments. I thought Texas Instruments had the whole school and educational market locked down. So it makes me kind of happy to see a classroom set of Casio graphing calculators. Hopefully these were at least a little bit cheaper than Texas Instruments calculators. Now here's something cool to see. These are old dial-up modems. These were used to get on the internet back when your computer would scream at you while you were trying to connect to it. This one's an external modem from Practical Peripherals, and it appears to be a 14.4 kbps modem. I never used an external modem. When I was a kid, all the computers that I had always had an internal modem, although they were usually like 2400 baud. This one's a 33.6 kbps modem from US Robotics. I did eventually get a modem as fast as this one, but it was an internal one as well. Whenever I find old computer hardware like this at a thrift store, I always go looking for more because I assume if there's a few modems here, they all got donated with a bunch of other stuff, but unfortunately, this was all I found. Lastly at the store, let's take a look at this Sears Seamstress stowaway. This looks like a travel iron or travel garment steamer, and normally I wouldn't find this that interesting, except for this one appears to be really old and it's got the old Sears logo on it, and also it almost looks brand new, like nobody ever used this. Look at how shiny the label is still. Finding old, new looking stuff like this always makes me wonder, how long it sat in the back of somebody's closet and what happened to make them actually finally get rid of it. Now I think it's time to move on to store number 2. The second store we're going to take a look at is another Goodwill location. Now here's something I didn't know existed. This is a little soda vending machine from Skybox and Maytag. Those are two brands I never thought I'd see side by side. It was $160, which is way more than I ever would want to spend on anything at Goodwill, but I have to admit that this thing was pretty neat. If it was a 50% off day and they actually had the keys for it, I might have purchased it. Especially when I noticed that you can remove the Arizona Diamondbacks theming and really slide in whatever artwork that you want. It's even possible to slide the pieces off the side as well. A little soda machine with your own custom artwork would be something really cool to have in your game room or garage. This location had a ton of old records. Here's some soundtracks from old Hanna-Barbera cartoons. That's kind of cool. I probably would have grabbed this one if the record wasn't so worn out. I looked at a lot of these and they were just scratched up and in really terrible shape. And some Disney records as well. I'm In You? Damn, Peter, calm down. That is an awful album name. It sounds like it should be the name of one of this guy's albums. They had a decent amount of cassette tapes here as well, but nothing that I really wanted. Definitely not looking for a ready-made Michael Bolton collection. They had a copy of the Complete Idiot's Guide to Cheeses of the World, which I don't understand because it's cheese, you just eat it. All cheese is good, you don't need a guide. And then down here is a copy of Adventures in Mexican Cooking from Ortho Books. I guess the Chevron logo explains the gas station taquitos on the cover. Wow, this is from all the way back in 1978. From what I understand, gas stations did a lot of promo stuff and gave out things like this back in the late 70s and early 80s. And I made fun of the gas station taquitos on the front, but the picture on the back actually looks pretty legit. I found another graphing calculator at this location, although this one is a Texas Instruments TI-84 Plus. I can't believe that they still charge well over $100 for one of these calculators new. And this one here is only $12.49. Hopefully somebody who actually needs this gets it for that price and it isn't just bought by somebody to resell. Now here's an interesting art piece. I believe this one's titled 4 Hours After Arby's. Okay, let's move on to our third store. The last store we're going to check out this episode is a Savers. I always check the glass cases up front first at Savers, but it's usually just Xbox One games and Nintendo DS shovelware. I usually find more interesting old games over here with the CDs. I'm also always looking for interesting albums as well. This one here caught my eye, this Fireside Jazz. I'm gonna go ahead and grab this. Even if you're not interested in music CDs, it is always worth kind of scanning through here though, because there is oftentimes old video games stuck in here as well. For example, here's a copy of The Final Round from Konami, and I actually really like retro golf video games and just like retro sports video games in general, and I probably would have grabbed this one, but the disc is missing. I doubt anybody stole an old golf game, so it was probably donated that way. Now here's something I haven't seen in forever. This is a expansion module for the Family Feud handheld game from Tiger Electronics. I think they made a Jeopardy game as well that took expansions like this. Now here's something I find at thrift stores all the time, although not usually in the box like this. These are play palms for the Nintendo Wii. I have a theory that like 30% of the garbage patch that's in the Pacific Ocean is made up of plastic from cheap Nintendo Wii accessories. They made so much of this crap and had it everywhere, but I never actually saw anyone use these kind of attachments. Here's an old set of LabTech PC speakers. I always like seeing these because I have a lot of nostalgia for old LabTech PC speakers, and it's too bad that these ones are stained there, or I might have grabbed them. Now here's something I never find at Goodwill, but I often find at Savers, and that's old laptops. This one's an old Dell Inspiron laptop that I think was designed to run Windows XP. It's an Inspiron 6000, and this one's in pretty rough shape. It's still nice to see though, because it seems like Goodwill just sends this kind of stuff off right to e-waste. There is kind of a market for old Windows XP laptops now because, not to make you feel old, but those are starting to become retro computers now. And speaking of old computers, here's a Master Power Center. I love the big clunky switches on these. You weren't a PC power user in the 80s unless you had one of these underneath your monitor. I found another laptop over in the toys section, but this one's a Barney's Learning laptop, and it still works.
Driver number 6. 6, that's right. Bye-bye.
The reason that I'm surprised that this thing still works is that when I looked at the back, I saw a year of 1999 on it. Usually electronic toys from this time period have been destroyed by batteries exploding in them. I think if you gave this to a toddler today, they would just give it back to you and want your phone instead. Let's head out of here and see what I picked up this episode. So here's what I picked up this episode of Thrifting Time. I grabbed a copy of Microsoft Encarta 97 Deluxe, which I'm pretty happy to have. One day I'll have all of these old Microsoft home titles. And then I also grabbed a copy of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? This will go pretty good with all my other edutainment stuff. You might recognize that CD tower. That's the one that I picked up during the last episode of Thrifting Time. And then here's the best collection ever, Galaxy of Games, that I picked up. I'm interested to dive into this and see what's actually on here. Let me know down in the comments below if you'd like to see a video on my second channel looking at this best collection of games ever. And then lastly, I picked up this Fireside Jazz album, which turns out doesn't work at all. The CD looks fine, but I can't get it to play in any CD player that I own, so that's unfortunate. And here is the Sony Mavica floppy disk camera that I grabbed. After I got it home and cleaned up and got a charged battery installed in it, I was happy to find that it works perfectly fine. And when I say fine, I mean fine, in that it works and it takes pictures, but the picture quality isn't all that great. Now, I wasn't expecting HD pictures, obviously, but I do get much better pictures out of my slightly newer Sony Mavica. Here's some pictures that I took of things that I like to take pictures of with old cameras. These are all pictures that I took a few weeks ago, and I like messing with these old digital cameras because I feel like there's kind of a patina that's added to these pictures. It looks like these pictures were taken 20 years ago. These pictures are a little too lo-fi for my taste though, so I'll probably use this camera a lot less than I use my slightly newer Mavica. This is where we're going to wrap up this episode of Thrifting Time though. As always everyone, Thanks for watching. Want to see your name here? Head on over to patreon.com/retailarchaeology to find out how you can help support the channel. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Thrifting Time. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and you can also follow me at social media. I realize that the Twitter logo down there is out of date, but I'm not switching it to that X logo, it's stupid. I'm also on Threads, but that icon looks like a pube, so I haven't added it here either.